Welcome back. You tell me now 8:13, and Governor Cuomo is stepping down, but he still may face criminal charges and civil lawsuits.
Joining us this morning is attorney Karen Agnifilo. She worked in the offices of the Manhattan DA Cy Vance's office. She was his top deputy, just left 3 months ago. Nice to have you on Good Day New York, Karen.
Hi, nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
So what are the chances? We know that Cy Vance's office has asked for some information right now to look into possible criminal charges. What is the process for that? What would they be doing right now?
So my understanding is there are 5 district attorneys' offices all over the state where this conduct allegedly occurred, and they're all in the process of conducting the investigation. And the most important thing right now is to preserve evidence. And what I'm concerned about is the governor and his staff will remain in office for the next 13 days. And I want to make sure that they preserve any evidence that the prosecutors will want to corroborate some of the things that the accusers will be saying and that support the events as will be described. So it'll be important as they're wrapping things up and closing things up and getting ready for the next administration, that they do preserve the evidence for the prosecutors, who will examine it very closely. And in addition to speaking to the victims and the accusers in this case, they will gather all of the evidence and assess whether or not a crime has been committed.
So, Karen, we know that the Albany Sheriff's Office and District Attorney looking into the charges of possible, allegedly, groping a woman's breast in Albany. What would the Manhattan District Attorney's Office be looking at? Because that seemed like the most egregious charge. The rest were, you know, kissing on both cheeks or kissing one cheek.
Well, the law, if you look at the report, and my understanding is several more women have come forward since the report. So I'm only going to talk about the individuals who described their conduct in the report, because that's where you have some facts that have been reported publicly. And in those 11 different accusers that came forward, I'd say between 6 and 8 of them, I could see potential criminal liability or criminal conduct.
Like what, Karen? And like what?
So there are 2 misdemeanor crimes that apply: forcible touching and sexual abuse in the 3rd degree, and they're both misdemeanors. And they involve touching the sexual or intimate parts of the body for either purpose of sexual gratification, or for the purpose of degrading someone, or for no legitimate purpose. And so really it has to be intentional, and you have to look at the context around it, because an accidental touching of the sexual or intimate parts of the body without that intention would not be criminal. So it really goes to it's both, whether it's kissing on the lips or accidentally touching another, touching a breast, touching a butt, all of those can be considered a sexual or intimate part of the body, depending, again, in the context with which these places were touched, and the intention there. So that is what could make it criminal in all of those instances.
Now, Karen, I'm sure you watched that interview yesterday, that briefing that he gave. He made it very clear that there was no intent there to save himself from those criminal charges, because you're saying there has to be intent. So how do you go about that then when you're dealing with someone that is making sure that they're saying there was no intent there?
Well, the report goes on to say that they found the accusers credible and that they did not find the governor credible. So I thought that was an interesting part of the report, where they went actually further, saying that the governor was not credible, which really means his story is not to be believed. Yeah. And on the one hand, he says yesterday, he says he didn't mean it, but he also is still denying it. So really, it's going to be, which is it? Did it not happen, or did it happen and you didn't mean it? And so those are the types of things that I think the investigation, the criminal investigation, will uncover and will seek to get an answer to. But if you believe the accusers here, then there will be criminal liability potentially.
Well, you talk about that these are possibly misdemeanor charges. You know what we're dealing with in New York City with bail reform. We can't even keep in violent people with guns. we're going to go after a misdemeanor with full steam?
Interestingly, in New York City at least, the vast majority of cases that are prosecuted are actually misdemeanors. So misdemeanors are something that is the bread and butter of every prosecutor's office in New York, and they go after misdemeanor sex crimes all the time, whether it's the subway, incidents that occur on the subway or on the streets of New York City, the groping and the grabbing and that sort of thing. All of that is prosecuted. So
And are they back on the streets pretty quickly, those people?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
They can be, yes. It depends, but yes.
Can I ask you one question about Melissa DeRosa, who stepped down just the other day? She was mentioned in that report 187 times, I think almost as much as Andrew Cuomo. Talk to me, will there be any charges coming her way in her participation, I guess, with some retaliation against some of his accusers?
So the retaliation part is more in the civil context. So the report kind of lays out two pathways for litigation. One is the criminal that we just discussed, and the other is potential civil cases, which the accusers can bring on their own in civil court. And those would be human rights law violations, also commonly known as sexual harassment. And retaliation is a protection under sexual harassment laws. And potentially, yes, that is something that she could be sued for civilly, for sure.
All right, Karen, great to talk to you. So you're not with the DA's office anymore. You're a defense attorney. What firm are you with, in case people are interested?
I'm with Garagos and Garagos.
Yeah, she knows her stuff.
There you go. So nice to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks for having me on.
Of course.